well, one way or the other, we'll figure it out. So welcome, Sarah. How's it going?
Amazing. How about yourself?
Good, good. I just heard a quote that I want to share with you and get your take
Okay.
on. Um, and this was so I'm part of a business networking group led by a coach, a very renowned executive coach named Marshall Goldsmith. And so one of the people that he had worked with was a former president of the World Bank, who said like the main thing that he learned from Marshall was, so I want to get the words exactly right. Optimism is not the result of rational analysis. Optimism is a moral choice. And that really struck me because like I'm really into rational analyses. And so when I look at the world and I look at, climate change and the rise of racism and polarization and climate and COVID denialism and all this stuff, as a rational person, it's very hard for me to be optimistic. And when I'm not optimistic, it doesn't make me want to do anything to make things better. But to frame it as
Hmm.
it's not about rational analysis. To be optimistic is a choice that you make about the sort of person you want to
Hmm.
be. And for me, you're one of the people that I know in my life who really embodies optimism. And I guess in a way, sometimes it feels like irrational optimism to me. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
if you only knew more, you wouldn't be so damn optimistic. So I kind of want to toss that to you for some like insights. What's your take on that?
So, yeah, I mean, being someone that is seems to always be optimistic, like even as I was little, even like seeing how the world has operated, right? And still believing that there's a better way. And like it's just like I don't know if it's something that I was just born with or I just continued to believe it and it just got easier and easier, but like that's kind of where, I've never really been a rational person, meaning like I never like when someone says something, like I'm always questioning it into there's got to be a better way. Like even how the world has operated, like since I was 10 years old, I'm like, there's got to be a better way. And I see it, like all this breaking down and all this stuff in the outside world, right? With someone looking at it rationally, it's like, oh my gosh, like we're at this like critical period, right? But to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're at this point in our lives that we can really start to look at optimism as in a different way, like for each of us, and really bring out the questions and the things that our hearts are desiring, out and speak it within our truth.
Hmm. Nice. And so, I mean, that's interesting to say. Like, you look at something and you immediately think, like, no, whatever it is, like, oh, there's a better way,
Yeah. And it's
right?
just and I'm like there are moments when, I allow myself to feel the feeling, but even in those moments of feeling the feelings, I still don't believe this is the way, and like it's just something that I constantly am playing with, to really like just understand, and then it keeps being proven to me over and over through my own experiences. So that's how I know
Hmm.
there's proof there.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And I suppose you could find proof for either view, right? Like it
Yes.
would be just as easy to, it's not like I have all the data and it all supports me. Like if you want to be a pessimist, you can find plenty of proof for that as well.
Yep. I mean, because there's so many of us, and each of us have different reflections within each of us that are parts of us, right? And so when we kind of like intertwine all that, there's many ways that we can dive into different information and kind of tap into ourselves and see what is it that how do we want to view it? Do we want to view it as this like different thing, or do we want to view it in a way that there could be something positive to come out of it?
Hmm. So when we're talking about the world, obviously there's limits to what we can immediately influence. But when it comes to our own lives and the choices we make every day, we have, way more direct control over that than we do over politics in other countries or even what our family members might be saying or thinking. And yet we can be extremely optimistic or pessimistic about our own journeys, even when we obviously have pretty much complete control, at least on a theoretical level. What do you, what do you do? What do you do? How do you keep your optimism going if you've had a slip up? If you look back on some behavior, some recent choice, and say, well, that's not what I wanted to do. Where does the optimism come from at that point?
So, for me, like now, it's like I'm so trained to be like, when something doesn't go my way, like I'm immediate, okay, what can I learn from this? Especially I just wrote my blog about my last experience of like my swim meet, right? And so there were so many things that I couldn't control. I didn't know how it would go. I didn't know if I would fit in my suit, and I didn't know if I trained enough, right? Because we're all in different levels of training, and so this is like a huge thing for me to even like grasp, right? But the more that I just was like, maybe all of it is perfect. Maybe I can fit in my suit. Maybe I have trained enough. Maybe the money will show up, And the moment that I surrendered in that of being like, I don't have to know how, and just allowing myself to have that experience before the experience happened. So basically the radical piece would be like, okay, I'm trying to figure this out, right, with my mind. But then the other piece was like, how about you not figure it out with your mind? How about you embody that, And so my recommendation for someone that is having a slip up, immediately, what is it that you can learn from that? Are you willing to release that habit right now? Or are you wanting to continue the pattern of, I'm unworthy, I can't do this, and you spiral down this whole thing, and then you end up repeating the same pattern again. So if you can catch yourself in the moment of how you're feeling, you can immediately change what's going to happen in the next moment based on your awareness right then and there.
Yeah. So to recognize that optimism or pessimism is like the glasses that you can put on, right? Just like if I'm going to put a lens on my camera, that will determine if I'm seeing a macro and everything. I'm only looking things up close and everything else is blurry, or if I've got a wide angle lens. Neither one is necessarily true or untrue. Right? It's just what's the useful framing for what I'm trying to accomplish. If I'm trying to catch a bee on a flower, I don't want wide angle. If I'm trying to demonstrate an exercise routine, I do want the wide angle. And so so for people to assess for themselves how, I have nothing against pessimism if it works, right? If it helps you achieve your goals. But I think it's useful for people to say, well, if I could choose if I have all these lenses, it's like walking into the camera store of your dream, and there's just hundreds of every kind of lens, and you can choose for yourself what you put on. I think it's useful to pay attention to which ones get me the results that I want in different situations.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and that's what I've been playing with. Like this morning, even last week, I hit walls, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm hitting a wall, and how exciting that I can now look at training and do something different, And so I encourage people that if you're hitting a wall, whether it's your weight loss or what foods you're eating or any of that, just look at it and say, what can I learn from this experience, and how am I going to look at my next experiences from learning this particular lesson right here.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time for sharing and giving us more tools and more options and more flexibility in navigating our lives.
Yes, definitely. Bye for now.
All right. Catch you later.
See ya.
All right, now how do I stop the streaming? Do I click the live button again? I don't know. Maybe I'll try this. Stop.